It was a bright morning in Washington, D.C. when former President Barack Obama appeared at a public policy forum, his calm yet confident demeanor instantly capturing attention. The hall was filled with journalists, political analysts, and university students eager to hear him speak about the state of American democracy. For months, whispers had spread that Obama might finally address the growing political tension between himself and Donald Trump, but few expected what came next. Standing behind the podium, Obama began his speech with the familiar tone of unity and reason. He spoke about justice, fairness, and the importance of maintaining public trust in the legal system. His words were measured, but as his voice grew firmer, it became clear that he was directing his message at someone specific. Justice, he said, should never be used as a weapon. When political power is turned against opponents instead of problems, we risk losing the very principles that make this country strong. The audience fell silent. Reporters immediately began typing furiously, realizing Obama's words were a direct strike at Trump. Cameras zoomed in, catching the subtle determination in his eyes. Obama continued, criticizing what he called the misuse of authority and warning that democracy could not survive if leaders treated justice like a personal tool for revenge. Across the nation, the clip of his speech went viral within minutes. News channels replayed the moment repeatedly, with commentators debating whether Obama's remarks were fair criticism or a political attack. On social media, supporters of both leaders clashed fiercely. Hashtags began trending, and everyone waited for one thing: Donald Trump's response. Behind closed doors at his Florida residence, Trump was already watching. According to insiders, he leaned back in his chair, smiled slightly, and told his aides, "He just made a big mistake." That moment marked the beginning of a new political storm, one that would soon dominate headlines across America. The morning after Obama's speech, the political world was on fire. Every major news outlet replayed his remarks, dissecting each sentence. Analysts called it a bold move, while others claimed it was a direct challenge meant to provoke Donald Trump. But those who knew Trump well also knew one thing: he never stayed silent when attacked. At exactly 9 a.m., Trump broke his silence. From his Florida estate, he invited a select group of reporters for an unplanned press conference. The cameras rolled as Trump walked out confidently, waving to the crowd. His expression was calm, but there was a spark in his eyes that everyone recognized. He was ready to strike back. "Barack Obama," Trump began, his voice firm, "should be the last person talking about weaponizing justice. His administration spied on my campaign, and everyone knows it. Now he wants to lecture me about fairness? Please." The audience erupted in murmurs. Trump paused, letting the moment build. He continued, pointing out several cases where he claimed the justice system had been used unfairly against him and his supporters. He framed himself as the target of political persecution, arguing that his opponents feared his influence and were trying to silence him. Within minutes, Trump's speech dominated every major platform. Supporters praised him for standing up to what they saw as hypocrisy, while critics accused him of twisting the facts. But one thing was certain: his response had captured the nation's attention. Trump didn't stop at words. That same afternoon, he released a detailed video addressing Obama directly. In it, he said, "I built this country's economy back when he said it couldn't be done. Now he wants to talk about justice? The people see through it. They know who's really fighting for them." The video spread faster than any news clip before. Millions of views poured in within hours. Analysts on both sides agreed that Trump's counterattack had neutralized Obama's earlier remarks and even turned the conversation in his favor. Meanwhile, at a private gathering later that evening, close aides reported that Obama had been briefed about Trump's response. He reportedly smiled, shook his head, and said quietly, "I expected that, but neither man knew." This public clash was only the beginning of something much bigger. The next few days were unlike anything the country had seen in months. Every talk show, radio station, and news outlet was buzzing about the new Obama-Trump clash. Analysts labeled it a battle of the titans, while social media turned into a digital battlefield. Supporters of both leaders began defending their sides with intense passion. Obama's followers argued that he had spoken as a statesman, warning the nation about a dangerous precedent. Trump's base, on the other hand, saw his reply as proof that he would never back down from establishment criticism. On television, clips of the two speeches were played side by side. Commentators compared Obama's calm, thoughtful tone with Trump's fiery, direct delivery. Each had struck a chord with different audiences, reflecting the deep divide that still ran through the heart of America. Political strategists began speculating on what the clash meant for the future. Some believed Obama's comments were meant to influence upcoming elections. Others thought Trump had used the moment strategically, turning a potential criticism into a rallying cry for his supporters. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens were discussing the issue everywhere. In cafes, workplaces, and online forums. Many were tired of political fighting, yet they couldn't look away. It was as if two symbols of American leadership had stepped back into the ring, reminding everyone that their influence still shaped the nation. Late one evening, a university debate in Chicago drew national attention when students from both political sides clashed over the incident. Some defended Obama's warning about preserving justice. Others argued that Trump's defiance represented true freedom of speech. The debate went viral, showing how deeply the issue had captured public imagination. Back in Washington, a group of senior lawmakers held a private discussion about the escalating tension. This could affect the stability of upcoming policies, one senator warned. We need to make sure this doesn't spiral into something bigger, but it already had. The story had become more than a disagreement between two former presidents. It was now a nationwide conversation about justice, leadership, and the future of democracy itself. While the public debate raged across the country, both Obama and Trump were quietly meeting with their closest advisors, each planning their next move. In Washington, Barack Obama gathered with a small circle of trusted aides and former officials at a private conference room. The atmosphere was calm but focused. He listened intently as one of his senior advisors briefed him on the overwhelming media coverage and public reaction. "Sir," the aide said, scrolling through the data on a tablet, "your speech reached over 40 million views across all platforms, but Trump's video response is closing in fast. His supporters have turned this into a movement." Obama leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. "It's not about who gets more views," he said slowly. "It's about what people remember. If they remember the message, that justice must remain fair, then it was worth it." His words reflected his long-held belief in principle over popularity. Yet, deep down, Obama understood that Trump's influence over his audience was unlike anything traditional politics had ever seen. He knew this wasn't just a clash of words. It was a contest of ideas, amplified by millions of passionate voices online. Meanwhile, at Trump's Florida estate, the mood was entirely different. The room buzzed with energy as Trump's team celebrated the success of his latest statement. His campaign strategist laid out the numbers proudly. "Mr. President," he said, "you've gained over 200,000 new supporters in the last 48 hours. Every news outlet is quoting your response. You've taken control of the narrative." Trump nodded with satisfaction. "Good," he said firmly. "When they attack, we fight back twice as hard. People like strength. They want to see a leader who doesn't bow down." But as he spoke, his political advisor interjected cautiously. "Sir, this is becoming bigger than a media fight. Lawmakers are starting to take sides. If this continues, it could affect future legal proceedings, even policies." Trump paused, then replied, "Let them take sides. At least now they'll have to show the world who they really are." The conversation ended with a sense of determination, but also tension. Everyone in that room knew the stakes were high. Back in Washington, journalists began uncovering hints that both camps were preparing for something major. Public appearances, interviews, perhaps even debates. Political analysts called it the return of two giants. And as the weekend approached, both Obama and Trump, in their own corners of the country, prepared to face the next round, not in private anymore, but on the biggest stage of all, the American media. It was announced unexpectedly. Both Barack Obama and Donald Trump had agreed to appear separately on two major television networks, scheduled within hours of each other. The timing was no coincidence. Both knew the nation would be watching. Producers at the networks called it the Night of Voices, while viewers saw it as a historic moment, two former presidents addressing the same issue each defending their version of truth. When the first broadcast began, Barack Obama appeared in a well-lit studio, seated calmly across from a respected journalist. He wore his signature composed expression, his tone measured and serious. "I'm not here to attack anyone," Obama began, "but I do believe in defending the idea that justice should remain blind. When political influence seeps into legal matters, democracy weakens. We have to protect our systems, not manipulate them." The interviewer leaned in. "Some say your comments were aimed directly at Donald Trump. Is that true?" Obama smiled faintly. "I'm speaking about principles, not personalities," he replied. "But when actions threaten the foundation of justice, we all have a responsibility to speak up, regardless of who's involved." His words were calm, yet the meaning was unmistakable. Across the country, millions of viewers listened, some nodding in agreement, others shaking their heads. 2 hours later, Trump appeared on another network. The atmosphere was entirely different. Lively, dramatic, and unapologetically bold. Surrounded by cheering supporters, Trump greeted the interviewer with a confident wave. "Look," he said, "Barack talks about justice like he invented it. His administration wasn't perfect. Far from it. They went after people for political reasons. Now, because I'm standing up for regular Americans, they call it weaponizing justice. It's hypocrisy, plain and simple." The interviewer asked, "Do you think this tension could divide the country even further?" Trump leaned forward. "The country's divided because people are tired of fake speeches and empty promises. They want results. They want leadership. And that's what I bring." The crowd erupted in applause. Within minutes, clips from both interviews flooded the internet. News commentators compared tone, substance, and style, Obama's measured reasoning versus Trump's emotional conviction. The debate became even more intense than before. Political experts observed something remarkable. Both men, despite their differences, had reignited political engagement across the nation. Voter registration surged. Young people began discussing politics again. Even those long disinterested in government found themselves drawn to the conversation. In living rooms and coffee shops across America, families debated. Some saw Obama's warning as a necessary reminder to preserve integrity. Others saw Trump's defiance as courage against political double standards. By the end of the night, one thing was undeniable. This was no longer just an exchange of words. It was a defining moment for the future of political discourse in America. The morning after the televised showdown, America woke up divided but fully awake. The country hadn't seen such nationwide engagement in years. Every headline, every podcast, and every social media post revolved around one question: who was right, Obama or Trump? Political talk shows ran back-to-back segments comparing the two leaders' interviews. Analysts replayed key phrases, body language, and tone, trying to interpret hidden meanings. Some admired Obama's calm intellect, while others celebrated Trump's fierce confidence. Across cities and towns, the divide became visible. In Chicago, groups gathered in public parks holding banners supporting Obama's call for justice and fairness. Meanwhile, in Texas and Florida, crowds of Trump supporters held rallies, chanting slogans about strength, truth, and accountability. The nation had split into two passionate camps, each certain they were defending the real America. At the same time, the tension reached Washington's political circles. Lawmakers from both parties began issuing statements. Some Democrats praised Obama for defending the moral foundation of the nation. Others, mostly from the Republican side, accused him of igniting unnecessary division for political gain. Inside the Capitol, senators and representatives debated how to calm the situation before it spiraled out of control. But every attempt to mediate seemed only to make things worse. The country was too emotionally invested. Meanwhile, social media was in chaos. Trending hashtags showed the scale of polarization. Millions of comments flooded platforms, some supporting Obama's warnings, others echoing Trump's defiance. Memes, videos, and parodies spread like wildfire, each side trying to outdo the other. Yet, beneath all the noise, something deeper was happening. A quiet unease began to grow among ordinary citizens who weren't loyal to either side. They felt the country's unity slipping further apart, replaced by a constant sense of conflict. One viral video showed a teacher from Ohio tearfully explaining to her students why respectful disagreement mattered. "We can support different leaders," she said, "but we must never forget that we're one nation." Her message struck a chord. Viewed over 50 million times, it became a symbol of hope amid division. Both Obama and Trump were aware of this growing tension. Advisors from both camps began urging restraint, warning that public frustration could turn unpredictable. At his residence, Obama reflected quietly with his wife, Michelle. "It's not the fight that worries me," he said. "It's what happens if people stop listening to each other altogether." At the same time in Florida, Trump met privately with his communications team. "They're trying to control the narrative," he said firmly. "We can't let that happen. The people need to know the truth, unfiltered." Both men were determined, but for different reasons. And though neither said it aloud, both knew the next move could change everything. Days turned into weeks, but the firestorm showed no sign of fading. Instead, it grew, drawing in celebrities, professors, business leaders, and even foreign commentators. Everyone seemed to have an opinion, and the more people talked, the more heated the debate became. Amid the chaos, a new development emerged. A prominent journalist from a respected national newspaper published a detailed report analyzing both men's records on justice and fairness. The article was balanced, presenting facts without bias, but its title caught the nation's attention. "When Justice Becomes Political." The piece spread rapidly, offering perspective where outrage had once dominated. It examined Obama's emphasis on the moral foundations of justice and Trump's argument that he was a victim of politically motivated investigations. The journalist concluded with a simple line: "Both men, in their own ways, believe they are defending America. But perhaps the truth lies not between them, but beyond them." The article went viral, forcing millions to reflect rather than react. For the first time in weeks, the tone of the public conversation began to shift. Talk shows started inviting scholars and civic leaders instead of partisan commentators. Educational institutions hosted open discussions titled "Justice, Power, and the Future of Democracy." Even within Congress, lawmakers from opposing parties began hinting that they needed to move past division. "The people are watching," one senator said during a televised hearing. "They're tired of politics as usual. We have to lead differently." Meanwhile, behind closed doors, Obama and Trump both took notice of the changing atmosphere. At his Washington office, Obama read the journalist's article carefully. He tapped his pen on the desk, then said quietly, "Maybe this is what we needed. A reminder that this isn't just about two people." At the same time, in his Florida home, Trump's chief of staff handed him a printed copy of the same piece. Trump scanned it, then looked up. "They're finally admitting what I've been saying. It's bigger than politics." Despite their contrasting interpretations, both men realized something important. The conversation they had started had grown beyond their control. That evening, several major networks reported that public opinion had reached a turning point. Polls showed Americans were no longer simply choosing sides. They were asking deeper questions about the balance between power, fairness, and truth. For the first time since the controversy began, there was a quiet sense of possibility, that maybe, just maybe, this clash could lead to a broader national awakening. But the calm didn't last long. Behind the scenes, political strategists were already preparing the next moves. Campaign teams, media advisors, and analysts all knew that one final confrontation, direct or indirect, was inevitable. And when it came, it would decide not only who won the argument, but how history would remember them both. By the time the 8th week arrived, anticipation had reached its peak. Every media outlet hinted that something major was about to happen. A final response, a defining moment that could settle the heated debate once and for all. Behind the scenes, both Barack Obama and Donald Trump were preparing separate addresses to the nation. The timing was, again, no coincidence. Each team wanted to deliver the closing message, one that would shape how history remembered this confrontation. Obama's team decided on a nationally broadcast speech from a university auditorium in Chicago, his political birthplace. Trump's team, meanwhile, planned a massive rally in Florida, filled with supporters waving flags and banners, eager to hear their leader's words. The night arrived. Millions of Americans tuned in to watch both events live, switching channels between them. Obama took the stage first. The auditorium was silent as he looked across the audience. Students, teachers, veterans, parents. He began in a steady, reflective tone. Over the past weeks, he said, we've seen a lot of anger, a lot of passion, and a lot of misunderstanding. My words were never meant to divide but to remind. Justice is not a tool for anyone's agenda. It's the foundation of trust in our nation. Without it, freedom cannot survive. He paused, then continued, leadership is not about proving who is stronger. It's about protecting what is right. We can disagree, we can debate, but we cannot abandon the principles that unite us. The crowd erupted in applause. His speech carried a message of reconciliation, a call for calm and reflection. An hour later, it was Trump's turn. He walked onto the stage to thunderous cheers, waving confidently. Unlike Obama's quiet auditorium, his rally was electric. Trump began his address with his trademark energy and directness. Folks, he said, we've been through a lot these past weeks. They tried to twist my words, attack my motives, and even question my love for this country. But I'll tell you this, no one loves America more than I do. The crowd roared. Trump continued, when I fight for you, the people. Not the politicians, not the media, but hardworking Americans who deserve justice, fairness, and truth. That's what real leadership means. He paused for a moment, lowering his voice. They say I'm weaponizing justice, but I say justice is finally being seen. For years, regular Americans were ignored, and now they finally have a voice. The audience erupted again, chanting his name as both speeches ended. Commentators scrambled to analyze them. Obama's was described as a call for unity through reflection. Trump's was praised as a declaration of strength and connection to the people. For the first time, both leaders had spoken not just against each other, but for the nation, in their own distinct ways. Late that night, news anchors declared it the final exchange between the two men. Not a battle, but a turning point in American politics. And while opinions remained divided, one thing was clear. Both Obama and Trump had left a lasting mark on how Americans understood justice, leadership, and the power of words. The following morning, the nation seemed to pause. The long, tense exchange between Barack Obama and Donald Trump had finally reached its conclusion. Yet the echoes of their words lingered in every household, office, and online discussion. Polls showed something remarkable. While people still stood on opposite sides politically, the tone of conversation had softened. Instead of anger, there was reflection. Instead of accusations, there was curiosity. Americans were beginning to ask not who won the argument, but what could be learned from it. Political commentators across networks agreed that both men had, in their own ways, changed the tone of public debate. Obama had reminded people of the need for fairness and accountability. Trump had re-energized millions who felt unheard and ignored. Together, their clash had forced the nation to confront difficult truths about justice, leadership, and power in classrooms. Teachers began organizing discussions about democracy and responsibility. In offices, co-workers who once avoided political talk began speaking again, cautiously but respectfully. Social media, though still divided, showed signs of maturity. People began sharing clips not to mock or insult, but to highlight key ideas and lessons. Behind the scenes, both camps took a step back. Obama returned to his work with civic organizations, focusing on education and youth leadership. Trump resumed his political activities, meeting supporters and preparing for upcoming campaigns. Though they remained opponents in ideology, both seemed to understand that their recent confrontation had moved the nation in a direction neither fully expected. A week later, a remarkable event occurred. A bipartisan forum was held in Washington titled Justice and Unity in a Changing America. Political leaders, journalists, and citizens from all walks of life gathered to discuss how to strengthen trust in the nation's institutions. The forum opened with a quote from Obama's speech and closed with one from Trump's rally. Two perspectives, one shared message about protecting democracy. That night, a major news outlet released a special documentary titled words that shaped the moment. It chronicled the timeline of the Obama-Trump exchange, showing how two powerful voices had reignited the nation's political consciousness. As the credits rolled, the narrator said, "History does not remember arguments. It remembers awakenings. And sometimes, even the fiercest rivalries remind a nation of what truly matters." In homes across the country, people watched quietly, realizing that what began as a clash of words had evolved into a moment of national self-discovery. Months had passed since the fiery exchange between Barack Obama and Donald Trump, yet its impact continued to ripple through the nation. The initial clash that had divided millions had now transformed into a milestone, a defining chapter in America's ongoing story about justice, leadership, and the power of speech. Historians began studying the event as a modern turning point in political communication. Universities hosted lectures on how both leaders had used completely different tones. Obama's calm appeal to conscience and Trump's bold, populist energy to reach the hearts of millions. What fascinated observers most was how those speeches had reshaped public dialogue, teaching people that disagreement could coexist with engagement. In Chicago, a group of students launched a civic initiative called Justice for All Voices. Inspired by Obama's reminder that fairness must remain the foundation of democracy, they began volunteering in legal aid centers and organizing public discussions on ethics and truth. Meanwhile, in Texas and Florida, local communities built grassroots movements encouraging political transparency, motivated by Trump's message of strength and accountability. Their motto, "Power belongs to the people," spread quickly across social media, drawing support from citizens who wanted their voices to be heard without fear or bias. The political establishment took notice. Senators from both parties began collaborating on small but meaningful reforms aimed at increasing transparency in legal processes. For the first time in years, Americans saw glimpses of cooperation that seemed impossible before the clash began. In one televised town hall, a moderator asked a young voter, "What did this debate teach you?" The young woman replied, "It taught me that leadership isn't about perfection, it's about conviction. And whether you agree with Obama or Trump, both showed how powerful words can be when people are listening." That statement spread widely, capturing what millions silently felt. At a private event months later, Obama was asked about the confrontation. He smiled and said, "History always remembers our differences, but what truly matters is whether those differences push us forward." In a separate interview around the same time, Trump was asked a similar question. He responded, "I said what I believed and I'd say it again, because real change doesn't come from silence. It comes from standing your ground." Though they never met face-to-face during that period, their legacies had become intertwined, two forces that challenged each other but, in doing so, awakened a nation to think, speak, and question more deeply. The confrontation that began as an argument had become a reminder of democracy's most essential truth, that freedom thrives not in agreement, but in the courage to debate and to listen. As the sun set on that chapter of American history, commentators summed it up simply: Obama spoke to the conscience of the nation, Trump spoke to its conviction. Together, they reminded America that justice belongs to everyone. And with that, a storm that began in conflict ended in clarity, not of who won or lost, but of how words, when spoken with belief, can shape the course of a nation. White heavy check mark, the end. White heavy check mark.